Well, something very profound has happened that has never happened before in all of American history. And even though people know something about it, but I don't think people have an understanding of where this thing can go. And it could represent a very great danger for America, and so on. And what do you call it? But it's almost locked in. Let me explain. Recently, the basic news has been, besides everything else, the basic news is that there's a whole scam about Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden and so on. But the profundity of this scam is that there seems to be a smoking gun. The evidence seems to be very clear-cut, and it will gradually be established. It takes time, but it's going to be gradually established. But Biden seemed to be involved in some kind of racket. It's like a RICO. It's a racket where he and his son and his family have fundamentally conspired to enrich themselves from communist China, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, and so on and so forth. But what's different about this is not simply the video that simply said that he wants to get rid of the prosecutor that's after his son. That we have a video, but we have something more than that, because now they have emails. They have emails which they are sure have come from his son Biden, and now the emails are now by the FBI and by the Senate, and they're looking into it. And how many emails are there? Well, there are a number of different groupings, but one group has 26,000 emails. And what they indicate is that Biden has been actively pursuing a lot of money while he was vice president, making money off China by selling influence and selling things. And you see already that Biden has actually been influenced by China, because when the United States was first hit by COVID-19, Biden was saying to everybody that you can all travel to China. And he was maintaining that the desire of Trump to curtail the travel to China was totally wrong and xenophobic and so on and so forth. And Biden was still pushing for travel to China and connections, associations with China. So we already begin to see the actual influence that China has had on Biden. Now, the question is, what are the ramifications? In other words, my question is this. If they examine these emails and they see definitely that it's from Biden, it's from his son Hunter, and this can be proven, it's a smoking gun. But if they prove this to be true, what does this mean for Biden? What kind of it's a criminal charge and so on, because Biden was doing this while he was vice president, and actually he was doing this for many years. So the real question is, what kind of charge is it when the vice president, while he's in office, is conspiring to be bribed and to be influenced by the enemy of the United States? What would normally be the charge on such a thing if it's proven to be absolutely true? Does anyone have any idea? What?
Treason. Treason. That's
right.
Treason.
Right. That's treason. Now, so therefore we see something absolutely amazing. For the first time in American history, there seems to be presented a smoking gun of evidence that Biden has committed treason, because there's evidence that he has benefited from it and so on, evidence that he was in contact with the Chinese and he lied about it. There's all kinds of evidence that show the charge of treason. Now, this has never occurred before. This has never occurred in American history. So the question really is, now, what is the media doing and everyone doing in response to this treason? What they're all trying to do is ignore the charge and say it didn't happen. And they're trying to say it was Russian disinformation and trying to negate the charge. But this thing is so big that eventually it will come out. This will not be let go. So I've heard that the House Republicans have already asked William Barr, the Attorney General, to provide a special prosecutor to look into this. That's how big this is. Now, this thing will be found to be true. It'll only take time. It's a question of time. Right now, every day that goes by, there's more and more evidence, because there's a guy who actually came out and said he participated with Biden in the meetings that Biden was having with the foreigners and so on. So there's clear witnesses, there's documents, there's witnesses, there's emails. There are 26,000 emails that point to this fact. So the question is, what happens if Biden gets elected or Biden doesn't get elected? Either way, what will happen to Biden if these charges are confirmed? That's the question. So the obvious question is that once he's confirmed, once he's found guilty of treason, he's going to have to face possibly the death penalty or at least a long term in prison. But even if he's elected president, they will not forget this charge. Why will they not forget the charge? Because they will forget a charge. They will not prosecute a president based on burglary or some other low-level crime. But based on treason or homicide, they will convict the president while he's in office, I believe. So in other words, this thing will come out and so on. Okay? So the question is, what will America do if this thing is confirmed? Who has any idea?
Well, Kamala Harris becomes the new president. He has to resign.
Well, that's what they say, but that's not so simple. Why? Because one thing is very obvious besides this. What's obvious is that the Democratic Party did not vet. The Democratic Party was apparently aware that these charges can be true, and they are really responsible for a cover-up. So is Twitter and so is Facebook. They've all been actively involved in actually covering this up, which itself is a crime. To cover up a crime that's been performed when you're in a high office and you're responsible actually for doing something about it. So the Democratic Party is responsible because they tried to cover up, obviously, and so on, which means that America will fundamentally... What's that?
Shimon, if he wins, he will bury this thing. The same way they buried the Hillary Clinton emails. If he wins, they will make this thing go away. The FBI is corrupt. Who's to say that it'll ever come up? The Republicans won't have the majority in the House.
I don't believe this is true. You can bury other things, mistakes, but you cannot bury open negotiations with the enemy and so on. You cannot bury treason. That's much too high of a charge. And these emails indicate the actual action of treason. And I don't believe you can bury this. They're going to try, but it will fail just like it's failing now. Because now what's coming out is that actual evidence, a smoking gun of 26,000 emails and many statements, which it says openly. It says that Hunter Biden, H, is going to have to give 10% to the big man, which has been testified that it's Biden. So it's more or less confirmed and a smoking gun that this is true. So when it comes down to it, if they appoint a special prosecutor, which they may do, or else Congress takes charge of it, or whatever it is, this will become a full-scale investigation. I believe that this is much too big to ignore. He can't bury this. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So the question really becomes, if Biden's put up on charges and so on and so forth, it's not only him who's put up on charges, because charges would also be done for the Democratic Party. How is that? Because they are obviously involved in some kind of cover-up. And it is a criminal charge, not only to be treasonous, it's a criminal charge to cover this up and to see to it that you avoid this whole issue and you elect a person to be president who's been charged with treason. I believe that this will go much further than Biden, and this will also impact the Democratic Party, which is responsible for a complete cover-up. Twitter, Facebook, the Democratic Party, all of them. All these journalists are responsible for a cover-up, and that clearly is being said by many people. So therefore, I think that this will not simply be accused of Biden. I believe that this thing will be much larger. So the real question, and who is doing all of this? The Rabboni Shalom. For some reason, and we'll discuss this in a second, the Rabboni Shalom has brought out a charge of treason and given the country cold, stone, solid evidence that this is true, that you cannot avoid this. So the real question is, what is the Rabboni Shalom doing? So in order to understand what he's doing, we have to figure out to some extent what's going to happen if this is true. And I believe that if this charge is proven, as it will be proven, and it must be proven, and all these people will be implicated. And why is that? Because fundamentally, America is not like China or Russia. America has millions and millions of people who are fundamentally have integrity. You know, even though the Democratic Party is corrupt, but there are millions of people who are not corrupt. People of the Republican Party, the evangelists, and so on. But there are at least half of America is honest and not corrupt. And if they see that Biden was willing to sell America down the drain and be treasonous by negotiating briberies and so on, they will not forgive this. Nor will they forgive the Democratic Party or all the media. So what will happen is an amazing thing that has never happened before. What will probably happen is one of two things. Well, the attempt will be and maybe the anticipation will be that if Biden is convicted on this charge, then Kamala Harris will become the president of the United States. No, I believe this will never happen. This will never happen because Kamala Harris and all the Democrats were part of the cover-up. So therefore, what's going to happen is for the first time in American history, or the second time in American history, America will split up in two countries. Why? Because they will say we cannot have a government where the vice president of the United States and also the president and so on and so forth was guilty of treasonous charges. Because it will be shown that because America is a country where millions and millions of people have tremendous integrity. Besides the fact that the Supreme Court will become a conservative court, they will demand that this be done. They will demand the charges be removed. And when it all comes out, it will demonstrate that not only Biden and his son, but it also demonstrates that the Democratic Party and all the media were covering up. That's a criminal act. It's a criminal act to cover up something which is treason. And then all the rest of them, half of America is going to say to the Democratic Party, we will not participate with you in a government because you are corrupt. If you are willing to do treason, we cannot trust you. So therefore, we cannot trust the millions of people who are voting for Biden because they are somehow involved in this thing and so on. And I believe that America, for the first time, will demand a cessation, to secede from the Union. This has a very great danger. In the time of Lincoln, you see, there was a possibility that America would split in two countries. It would, the southern states wanted to secede and permit slavery, and the northern states. Now that should have happened. That would have happened if Lincoln had lost the election, because the other party actually was saying, we agree with that, you can secede. But it was Lincoln that fought that and demanded that America stay as a union. That's the only reason why America stayed together. Otherwise, the charge of slavery was so great that the country was willing to split. Now, even though they didn't split until now, I believe that suddenly there's placed a charge on the vice president of the United States and even on the president and so on of treasonous actions. So I don't see how the Goyim, half the Goyim in America who are people of integrity, will secede from the Union because they cannot participate with anyone who is part of that conspiracy at all. So there's a very strong possibility that America will have a secession and that America will split up into two countries. That's what I really believe. And now you cannot go back against that. You cannot. What has happened is, since the Rabboni Shalom, has made this an open and shut case, and he has given evidence so that they cannot say it was a Russian disinformation. Why? Because there's open emails and so on and so forth that show this to be true. So you cannot retract this. So it's not simple that they're going to put Kamala Harris. Not only are there millions of Americans who will disagree with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris wants to take away the guns. She has openly said this in America. She wants to cancel the Second Amendment of the Constitution, plus other things. There are millions of people who have bought guns since February. Do you know how many people have bought guns since February? Does anyone know?
No.
Does anyone have any idea?
100 million?
Well, what they say is that over 5 million people have bought guns since February. That's an enormous amount of people. And why did they buy guns? Because they suspect that Biden or Kamala Harris are going to try and take it away. So therefore, what does that mean? That 5 million people, that's besides the people who already have guns. There are millions of people in America who already possess guns. So what is going to happen if so many people, not around, every cop has guns, and every cop union has promoted Trump as president. Not one of them has promoted Biden. So what's going to happen if suddenly Kamala Harris becomes president, even if she does? What's going to happen if Biden wins and then is suddenly thrown out? Which she will be thrown out. And then suddenly Kamala Harris put in its place. And she tries to take away their guns. There will be a rebellion. There will be actually a civil war or something like that, where they will refuse to participate in a government sponsored by Kamala Harris. They will never allow her to take away the guns. This is an open and shut thing. I don't think there's a possibility, because she will tell the cops to go collect the guns, and the cops will tell her to go to hell. Every cop in America has voted for Trump, not Kamala Harris. She's the most liberal person in the Senate. She thinks that if she becomes president, she will have power. I don't believe she will have any power at all, because she will not be recognized, you see. And I believe even the Supreme Court may disallow it. So therefore, you are facing the real dangers for the first time in American history of secession, where the country will split up in two. This is what I'm thinking. So the question really is, what is the Banashim doing? What is he doing? Because it's not simply that Biden is ahead in the polls, according to certain polls. He's ahead. So there is a possibility that he will win, although Trump says, and others saying, from the Trafalgar polling, that Biden will not win. But even if Biden does win, he will not remain president, because the charge of treason is too obvious. It's too obvious. It will be prosecuted, and he will be thrown out, even if he's elected president. And the thought that Kamala Harris will be able to take over, I believe, is nil, because America will not give up its gun. They will not give up its freedom of speech. She will never be able to take that away from America. America has a history of the ability to bear arms and the history of free speech. She will not be able to confiscate that, although she will try that, and so on. And even if the Democrats gain a majority, which is unlikely, America will never listen to her. Instead, they will say the Democrats, at best they will say the Democrats should form their own country. We will not have anything to do with the Democratic Party, who covered up treason by the Vice President of the United States. This is much too big. So I believe that this is a real threat of secession. And that's the end of America. If America secedes, with certain states secede, if 5 or 6 states, which are Democratic, secede from the Union, most of the states will go to the Republican side. America will become 2 different countries, because they will not sustain the charge of treason on the vice president, along with the Democratic Party, who attempted to cover the whole thing up. This is my prediction. So the only question left for us here really is, what is the Banashim doing?
Shimon, I only joined 10 minutes ago, but David, hi everybody. This is, of course, assuming your position if Trump does not win the election. I'm assuming. I didn't hear what you said.
No, it doesn't make a difference. Even if Trump,
go ahead. Yeah.
No. If Trump wins the election, they're going to still. You're right. If Trump wins the election, America will not succeed. They will not secede from the Union because Trump won the election and he's the president. But I'm saying if Trump doesn't win the election, or what's going to happen? America will never accept Vice President Biden as the president because he's being charged with treason and he will be convicted. Mm-hmm. He will be convicted of criminal charges and so on. And what will happen then, I don't know. But the Democratic Party will not be able to get away from this also because right now they are participating in a cover-up. They are trying to ignore this by saying Russian disinformation. And they're disproving this already because there are witnesses, actual witnesses, who say they were in the meetings themselves. So Biden will not be able to get away, and the Democratic Party knows it. And they're probably conspiring that if Biden is not voted in, or if he's voted as president, once he's voted as president, they will still be able to hold power. Why? Because they'll have Kamala Harris as president. And I don't believe that's going to exist because America will never accept her as president of the United States to be able to take away their arms. Over 5 million people have bought arms recently. You see it. There are 5 million. In fact, you can't even buy guns anymore because everyone has run out of stock. And we're not talking about the millions of people who already have guns in many of the states where it's allowed and so on. So therefore, they will never give up their guns and so on. And they will never let her take away their right to free speech. So therefore, they will, I believe, in such a circumstance, they will literally secede from the Union. They will secede from a democratic administration. They will say that you have no right to administrate this government because you are all corrupt, totally corrupt. So the Bereshit, it seems to be, has set up a situation where simply it's not about Trump vs. Biden. It's not about who's going to win. It's about the fact that Biden will definitely be charged with a crime eventually, and the charge will be that of treason or something like that. And America will not only throw Biden out, but they will throw the American government out, which will be dominated by the Democratic Party. So therefore, America is in great danger because it very likely will split up. Does everyone see what I'm saying? So the question is, why is God... What's that?
I want to ask you, so the question is, why do you think if Biden, let's say he does win, why do you think the legal process, which right now, the last 3 years, has not done anything about what's obvious that he's done criminally, why do you think that when he wins the presidency, that all of a sudden the legal process will then move forth and charge him with treason to get rid of him? I mean, that's to get rid of him.
Right.
Why get rid of him, you're saying?
Well, this is a very good question, but the answer is obvious.
It's an excellent point that he's making. Excellent point. I wanted to say the same thing.
Right, so I'm going to answer what I think is done. Now, I'm not saying 100% sure, but I believe that it will not make a difference. For 3.5 years, the Democratic Party has been after Trump with Mueller and with the impeachment and so on. There's been so much activity with Trump and the criminal courts that they've managed to ignore and avoid the whole issue of Biden. Why have they not looked into Biden? Because they've had such profound attempts at getting rid of Trump. That's why. But this is over. This is really over. They have not been successful. So now that Biden, if he does win the election, he will become the sole purpose, the sole candidate for a criminal charge. And now they have a smoking gun evidence that he is guilty of bribery or treason. You see, to treason. So therefore, he will definitely be thrown out. The only question is whether or not Kamala Harris will take over. In fact, many reporters are saying that if he's found to be convicted, he will be thrown out as president, even though he's elected president. Why? because you can ignore certain criminal charges for a president, like burglary or something like that. You cannot convict a president. You know what I mean? You know, except if the Congress wants. But you can convict him for treason. Treason is not an exception to that law. And if he was treasonous, you can then throw him out. And if Kamala Harris thinks that she's going to take over and take away the guns from America, she will not be able to do that. They will not listen to her. They would rather secede from the Union. Besides the fact that the Republicans will say that the Democrats literally covered up the charge of treason for Biden because they refuse at all to even acknowledge the possibility of treason. I mean, you don't see any papers reporting it and so on. So therefore, I mean, see, my theory is that there are many people in America who have integrity. Even though you may not think that, but there are millions and millions of people who have tremendous integrity and would never sit with a government that supported a president who, even if he's elected, will have been treasonous. That will not happen. I don't believe that will happen. And that will be the possibility, that will create the possibility where they will secede from the Union. So what the Rebbe has done is not simply allow Biden to win, if he does win. He is simply not that, because the Rebbe, since February or March, has allowed Biden to go be ahead in the polls. Why that is itself a miracle. That people will even vote for a man who's cognitively declined is absolutely astonishing. And that they would allow such a person to run America is absolutely astounding. I mean, none of you would appoint Biden as a babysitter for your children because he's cognitively declined. So how can they appoint him as the president of the United States to run a country with 320 million people? Do you understand what I'm saying? The very fact that they're doing that is a certain type of psychosis. America is in a psychotic, it's a kind of a psychotic episode that this is possible. And this is a derech nes. The fact that people have given the poll numbers to Biden to be more successful than Trump is psychotic. Because everyone knows that he's cognitively declined. When he gets up there and he says, I'm running for the Senate. And that's what he says, and that's what he believes. At that moment, he's completely, he has either Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or something. Something is creeping on his head. He is at least 10 to 20% declined, and you cannot take a person who's lost 20% of his mind and make him the president of the most powerful country on earth. This is suicide. Now, the Banacham has said something else. He's gone even further. He's saying not only is cognitively declined, not only have I created a situation where Biden is cognitively declined, but I've created a situation where I've allowed Biden to be charged with treason, and I am providing the actual evidence, smoking gun evidence that this is so. There are 26,000 emails that point to such a fact, and they have this fact. They're just beginning to examine these emails. And by the time they finish with these emails, they definitely will charge Biden, even if he wins the election, as a treasonous president. And there's a good likelihood that America will secede from the Union. The Republican Party will secede from the Union, because they will not want to be part of an administration who supports a president and who covers up the charge of treason. That's what I believe.
Shimon, the FBI had this computer for a year. Nobody knew.
I know. So that's Ray. That's Christian.
Yeah, they were up and they were pretty successful.
But it's not that simple. It's not the FBI. It's not Biden. It's no one else. Who is it that's doing all of this?
Jerusalem.
Right. And my question is, why is God doing this? Why is he allowing Biden to be charged with treason eventually and to be thrown out even if he's elected? It is God who's created this situation. It's not Biden. It's not Hunter Biden. It's no one. This is God's program. Why is he doing this? He's creating the actual possibility and eventuality that Biden will be convicted of treason. or some criminal charge based on his position as the vice president, he will be canceled. He will be eliminated as president. America will not hold on to a president who's guilty of treason or something like this. So the question is this: if this happens and so on and so forth, why is God doing this? Why has God brought this whole situation up to the level of treason? God didn't have to do this. If God wanted Biden to win, right? He would never have done this. He would never allow the people. He would never allow the people. In fact, when Biden ran for president, he did the most stupid thing. Because how can a man run to be president and have such possibility of charges against him? There were so many avenues in which Biden could be shown to be treasonous. There were a lot of people involved in these negotiations, eyewitnesses and documents that are involved in these negotiations with the Chinese. Enough people knew about this and were witnesses to this to testify this. So why would Biden open himself up to the possibility of being charged with treason? And the answer is because he's not all there. The answer is not all there. No normal human person who has been involved in such treason activities for many years would allow himself to what? The possibility of being charged with treason when there's really so much smoking gun evidence against him, right? He would never allow that, but he allowed himself. The biggest mistake that he made was that he ran to be president, and there would only be a question of time before this information got out.
Shimon,
not only that, this FBI
question.
Computer.
Yeah, but my question is,
sat on it during this impeachment while they were busy trying to impeach Trump, which
so
was based on the Ukraine. The evidence was all there, and they held on to it. That is an indictment of every Democrat.
But now they can't hold on to it anymore. Even though the FBI kept this information, right? But they cannot hold on to it. This has finally come out.
But it seems like you're saying that it's the deep state Democrats' plan for this to take place to get Biden in and then knock him out and have Kamala take his place.
Well, I don't really believe that. I don't believe that the Democratic Party planned this. That they planned that eventually Biden would know. No, I don't think that's it's that bad.
Okay.
But they were hoping that just like the Republicans ignored the video where he threatens the Ukraine with $1 billion if they don't fire the prosecutor. Since they saw that the Republicans did not do anything with that video, they probably thought that Biden could get away with this. And that once he's president, it's over. No one's going to look into it. But they made a big mistake. And the Rebbeinu in the last 2 or 3 weeks has suddenly brought this in front of everybody in America, because this was brought in front of America by the debate. Even though the media and so on, and Twitter and Facebook are trying to hide this with an actual cover-up, it came out during the debates. Suddenly a new thing came out where he was accusing Biden of being corrupt, and he said he has the evidence. And now what's happening? People have come out who said that they were part of that conversation. And not only that, the Republican House, the Republican Party of the House has now requested from Barr a special prosecutor. This thing has come out. It's gone beyond the FBI and beyond everything. And those 26,000 emails have been given to the FBI, but they've been also given to the Senate. And all the senators, the Republican senators, know as a fact that this is true. The evidence points to this as true as a fact. And they are now on top of it. They will not let this go. This is a very big mistake. They will not let this go because you cannot let the charge of treason go by a president of the United States. They can't ignore this. This is not like burglary or something else. Watergate was a third-rate burglary. That's all the Watergate was. The most they got Nixon on was the fact that he tried to cover up a burglary. But burglary, they couldn't charge a president with burglary. But they can charge a president with either treason or murder. Those two charges remain. And treason surely remains because this will affect his performance as president of the United States. So now they have something on Biden which they cannot let go and which will eventually come out, because it is coming out. Every day that we speak, it's coming out. So what does this tell me? That the Banishim was not satisfied with making Biden cognitively declined. He was not satisfied with that. He was not satisfied with saying about Kamala Harris and Biden that they're against fracking, that they're against oil, that they want to take away the guns of America. That's bad enough. But the Banishim allowed Biden to be ahead in the polls. And the last 3 weeks before the election, suddenly something comes out which can be devastating. And it will be investigated. Now, it's definitely in the hands of the Senate. It will be investigated. Every Republican senator is after Biden. And they're saying that he cannot run for the presidency. He's a criminal. So what I'm saying is, if this is true, this possibly could lead to secession from the states, from the Republican Party against that. And there are millions and millions and millions of Americans who are honest and have integrity. They're not like the Democrats. You know what I mean? They're not willing to do anything that the Democrats do. So therefore, I'm trying to understand this is a fact. This is not a supposition. You people think that this is a supposition, maybe. I'm telling you, this is not a supposition. The Banishim would not have brought this out at the last couple of weeks of the election, that Biden can be charged with treason if he didn't need to do something with this. And he had to do something with this. This is already too much, too far. So my question is this: why did God do this? Why is God threatening America with secession or something? This is going to be catastrophic. No vice president has ever been charged with treason. The charge of treason itself, the greatest crime of a president. That means the man who America considers like Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold was a traitor, and he is forever a traitor in American history. No charge like this has ever been preferred against a vice president. And now it's going to be done. I promise you. This is what it looks like. So the question is not if, the question is when. When he's thrown out as president. Yes.
In the event that Trump wins, why is this happening now? Right? You feel pretty strongly that Trump might win. So why is this happening now? On that side of the coin.
Okay, that's a good question.
Excellent question.
That's an excellent question, and I'll answer that in a minute. I will answer that in a minute. There's a very deep answer to it, and I will answer those questions: why God is doing this, and even if Trump wins, why is he doing this? That's a very good question. But I'm asking you: does anyone tell me specifically a reason why this will not happen? Given the situation, this is a profound new event that's happening that has never happened before. And can anyone honestly tell me?
Yeah, I could tell you honestly, because you see already the precedent. When Eric Holder was the Attorney General, I mean, the scandals that went on under Obama, he covered complicitly every one of them up. Fast and Furious.
Yes, but with Obama, that's true. But that's true. But what did Obama cover up? He covered up certain activities.
The Clinton Foundation, nothing has been done. She bribed all sorts as Secretary of State. She bribed.
But there's no proof. Right. You don't understand. There is no.
The wheels of justice go.
But you don't understand something. In all of these cases, these were activities that were done by the Obama administration, which he can cover up. That's number one. And even the thing with Clinton said that, she made a mistake or that there wasn't, but she was able to cover it up, but not enough, because by the end of the election, Comey came out against Clinton, and that's probably why she lost the election. So when the push comes to shove, that information came out. And why didn't Trump indict or convict Hillary Clinton? Because he didn't want to do that. It didn't pay. That would split America. It wasn't necessary because he won the election. So it wasn't necessary to go after Hillary Clinton to get her. It wasn't necessary because she lost. But what I'm saying, this is necessary. Why? Because this is a charge of treason. This is not a charge of simply mishandling emails. in a private server. This is actually treason.
Biden will resign, and that's what will happen. He's anyway going to be powerless. All he's going to do is
Biden will
resign.
But even yes, Biden will resign.
He's a puppet anyway, so it's irrelevant. He'll just make it official and he'll resign, and they'll say, Yait's resign. That's enough.
But that's
not.
But that's not true. It's not true, because not only is Biden will be guilty of treason, the whole Democratic Party, which failed to vet and which has participated in a cover-up. Isn't it obviously that the it's not something else. So therefore, would America?
You're right about that, but that when Trump wins, and he will win, when he wins, that's when the Rabbi Shalom is going to take out his wrath on the Democrats, because all this, that's to answer David's point. That's why it's happening, because it's setting up the stage so that when Trump wins, now they're going to finally destroy, the Rabbi Shalom is going to destroy the Democrats and the Erev Rav and all of them for what they've done. And this is the impetus behind it.
Yes, what you're saying is true. I was about to say that. I didn't get to that yet. There are two questions on the Rabbi Shalom. What?
Sorry about that. I started to jump the gun.
Yes, you jumped the gun. But there are two questions on God. The first question is, why is God given such possibility of Biden winning? Because he still has a possibility of winning. We do not know for sure that Biden will lose. It looks like that, maybe, and so on, but we don't know for sure. And the only reason why now we think that he'll lose is because Trump did much better on the debates, which the Banisham allowed, and because of these charges, possible charges of treason and bribery. That's the only reason right now we are much more certain that Trump will win. But that's not the thing. The Banisham is waiting to almost the end to do this. You see it. Why is so? The question is, why is God doing this? So the answer is, okay. The first answer is what? Well, wait a minute. Before I give this answer, and the second question is, why does God want to threaten America and threaten secession? Because this remains a distinct possibility, especially if Kamala Harris becomes president, that America will rebel and will not keep what she's saying. She will not be able to create a gezerah, an edict, that no one can have a gun in America. It's impossible. Too many people have guns. Too many people have bought guns in the last 6 months. There are over 5 million purchases of guns and so on. And these people who are buying guns for one reason, because they are anticipating the possibility of having to go to war. So therefore, they need guns. But I'm not. Why? My question is the Rabbi Shalom. Why is he doing this?
Mm-hmm.
But you all have to admit that this is a possibility, and it's never happened before in American history. So I want to answer the question of why God is doing this.
Let's do it.
This whole thing. Does everyone understand what I've just presented as a possibility?
Yes, I do.
And I wish somebody can deny this. I wish one of you guys can give me a reason why this won't happen. There is no reason why. It's too far gone, and it's a smoking gun. It's not. The Democrats will not be able to say Russian disinformation, which has already been denied by the FBI and the head of national security. It is not Russian disinformation. Putin must be laughing all the way to the bank that they're accusing him of writing the email.
You're assuming that the FBI has some honest people in there. Even though they buried this for a year, they will stop burying it from now on.
Well, the real one is corrupt. You see, it's not up to the FBI. It's beyond the FBI. First of all, Christopher Wray will be fired. But that's not the only point. It's beyond the FBI.
If Biden wins, he might not be fired. If Biden wins. See,
if he's convicted of treason, he will be fired.
But it has to be investigated. It has to be brought to light.
But eventually,
and all the news has to start carrying it. That all has to happen. If they decide to bury it, so me and you, and then, the people, the Republicans might know something corrupt smells, but if they ignore it and they don't cover it, it's a cover-up, and life goes on. We've seen this.
No.
We've seen what they did.
No. You're thinking, I'm sorry, you are thinking too stupid.
Campaign, and nobody got criminalized because of it. There was no ramification. There's so many things they did that were totally corrupt, and there was no judgment.
So why is it going to change? Again, why is it going to change?
Yeah,
because there's
assuming that this will change.
Pardon me. You guys are, whoever's saying this, whatever, you are thinking much too superficially. You do not understand the ramifications of what I'm saying. You cannot charge a president, whether he's sitting or not, with treason, and that should be ignored because the evidence is stone cold. There are 26,000 emails that mention that in one way or another mention Biden when he has lied to the American people, and that Biden was involved in actual corruption with the Chinese, which is the enemy of the United States. The charge of this thing is treason.
Why isn't the charge being presented now as opposed to after he wins the election? Why is that going to change? We know that now. Everybody knows that now. Why is the legal system going to all of a sudden flip sides and go after Biden if he, God forbid, wins the election?
Because there are millions of people in America who have integrity, and they will never allow a charge of treason to be covered up and be ignored. I'm sorry.
The email.
I'm sorry.
Why are they allowing it now? Why are they allowing it now?
Yeah, they're burying it.
Why are they allowing it now?
Because not enough of it is. Because not enough Americans know this, and the evidence has not been cleared. The cover-up is still going on, but you don't understand. This is now in the hands of the Senate. It's in the hands. The tapes are in the hands of the Senate. They have the emails. They have everything. It's all given to them. And Boba, please let me finish.
Okay.
And Bobolinsky, who is an actual eyewitness to everything, is testifying in front of the Senate that he himself witnessed Biden with treason. He witnessed Biden negotiating with them. This has gone much too far. They tried to create a cover-up with disinformation. They have failed because even the FBI said this is not true. And the National Security Advisor had said this is not true. This is gone beyond. And now they have an actual witnesses, and there are many more witnesses who will show up. There were a lot of people who know about this. So they were able to cover it up until the fact that they ignored the video. You can ignore a video, and Biden can say, the reason why he threatened Ukraine with taking away $1 billion is because America was concerned with the corruption of Ukraine. So you can get away with that. But this evidence of emails and so on and so forth is much too profound. You cannot get away with that. If this is brought in front of a grand jury or this is brought, then this will not be covered up. And if they do cover it up, millions of Americans will say, if you cover up and you leave this man as the president of the United States, who's obviously was involved in treason, we will secede from the Union. You have no idea. You guys have no idea what's going on now. This is on a different level. This is not some kind of administrative mistake or something, or an email situation where she used emails in a private server. You know what I mean? This is much worse. This is a vice president who's negotiating with the Chinese Communist Party to get millions and millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a whole different story. This is the main enemy of the United States. And here you have a person who, while he was vice president, was negotiating with them to get money to do things for them. This is treason. I don't think you guys understand this. So they can't cover this up, even though they want to. They're going to try as hard as they can for as long as they can. But even if Biden is elected president, this will come out.
So
he will be convicted.
An email like that, Shimon, they still don't have a clear email that he is implicated.
They do have a clear email.
Yeah,
they do have a clear email.
Have his name. The big guy email is not a name. They could watch that under
what?
Well, there's a witness there. It's witnesses.
What's that?
Assuming that there is black and white information in writing, clear, that can't be refuted. They washed everything away. Any email that came out till now that had Terut.
No, you've been asleep for the last 3 weeks.
Right.
I'm serious, because there's emails that directly implicate Biden, and there's witnesses that say that when it refers to the top guy, it's referring to Biden. Bobolinsky said, I was part of those negotiations, and I'm telling you that H stands for Hunter, and the 10% that's supposed to be given to the top guy, that is Biden.
Right. Yeah.
Is anyone contesting that? Nobody's contesting that.
No.
That's why they won't deny it. Why isn't it Biden simply said, I won't? He didn't deny it. He hasn't denied it till now. Why?
Right.
Because he can't deny it.
So the question also,
it's an open and shut case.
Shimon, I think you should get to the Ashkafic element of it.
Let's get to the Ashkafic. That's right. The divine agenda.
Let's get to the Ashkafic. We could debate this for ad nauseum.
Yeah.
I think once people hit Ashkafic, you give we have full circle, and people understand better where you're going.
Okay, you want.
I believe it's being driven from the Ashkafic part of it, as much being driven from the other part.
Well, I'm somewhat surprised, because I seem to have to try and prove over and over again something which is inconvertible.
Right.
This definitely has happened. I'm not talking about something that can happen. I'm talking about the fact that the evidence has become smoking gun. You know what a smoking gun is? That's what this evidence has become. So the question that we have to ask now is, why is God doing this?
Yes.
Why is he doing this? So up to now, you see, now what I've always believed, and I've always said this in the Hashkafa, that this is a war. This is a war between the Democrats and the Republicans. It has come to the level of a war. You see, why? Because the Democratic Party has become the form of the Erev Rav. Now, what's the essence of the Erev Rav? And you have to understand, since the Chet of the Egel was not simply a Chet that Klal Yisrael did and the Erev Rav did. That's not that simple. That's what everyone thinks. Everyone thinks that the Erev Rav convinced Klal Yisrael to build an Egel Azov. Okay, fine. But that's not what happened. What happened was something much more profound. Because what happened was, when the Erev Rav, convinced Klal Yisrael to build a Egel Azov, they created a new form of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara never existed in the form of an Erev Rav. This was created as soon as when the Erev Rav said about the Egel Azov. And what does that mean? Because there's not the fact that the Erev Rav was able to convince Klal Yisrael to worship the Egel Azov was not really Avodah Zorah. Why? Because normally Avodah Zorah represents one of the Kochovim and Mazolos. In fact, what Avodah Zorah is called is Avodah Akum, Avodah Kochovim and Mazolos. Right? That's what Avodah Zorah is. But this was not Avodah Zorah. Why? Because the Egel Azov represented the Rabbanu Shalom. Because they said, Eile Lekecha Yisrael Asher Alisecho Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Now, were they lying? They weren't lying. Because the Egel Azov replaced Moshe Rabbeinu. And the koyach of Moshe Rabbeinu was the koyach of Mashiach ben Yosef. So what the Erev was doing was making a worship out of the koyachas of the Mashiach ben Yosef. The Avodah Zorah of the Erev was the Mashiach ben Yosef. It was not another God. That's why there are people who hold this was not Avodah Zorah. But in a certain sense, it was Avodah Zorah, only in the sense that they were trying to say that now we control it. In other words, we control the koyach of the Mashiach ben Yosef. Moshe Rabbeinu initially had that koyach, but he died because they thought he died. So therefore, they said if we make a calf, and that calf was Kabbalistic. You don't understand. Why did they choose a calf? Why? The calf represents Aries in a certain way, but that's not why they chose it. They chose Aries, they chose that calf, because what? Because the calf represents, the ox represents Mashiach ben Yosef, because it says, B'chor Shorei Hodaloi. When Yaakov gave a bracha, when he gave a bracha to Yosef, he said, B'chor Shorei, he compared him to an ox, to a bull. And he said, his power is a new power. Because it's the most beautiful part of an ox, is the power because the ox is the B'chor. He was comparing Yosef to the most beautiful of his sons. He was the B'chor of his sons. And therefore Yosef had the koyach of Mashiach ben Yosef. And Yaakov Avinu compared Yosef to a bull. Just like Mashiach ben David is compared to an Ari, to a lion. The Mashiach ben Yosef is compared to an ox. Hello?
Yeah.
What's happening there?
Anyone get dropped? Is anyone still there?
I'm all here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good.
Okay. Is this part of the cover-up?
They're listening. Big brother.
It's a Sutton trying to cover it up. Go ahead.
Right. Why? Because I've never heard the statement.
Right.
Are we? So, Michael, are we still on tape?
Yeah, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm saying is I believe to be absolutely true. I don't make up things in my head, and I don't say things that exist when they don't exist. I'm talking about reality now. I'm talking about smoke and gun evidence. So I'm looking forward. So I'm telling you what really happened. What really happened by the Chet of the Egel, by the sin of the golden calf, was what? Was that the Erev created a new type of Yetzer Hara, and most of you don't understand what happened. This Yetzer Hara never existed before. What was this Yetzer Hara? This wasn't the true Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. This was not a Kochov, it was not a Mazel or anything. This was an animal which represented the Mashiach ben Yosef. And all they were saying is that we have to now have the Mashiach ben Yosef in the form of an ox, which is his form, and Kabbalistically they had certain shemus which transferred the power of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Egel Azov, or at least they thought it did. So what they said, now we have to listen to this Egel. This Egel will tell us what to do. So they simply said, this Egel represents Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the new form of Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, you can call the Egel Azov Moshe Rabbeinu, because it represents him. So what kind of, the question is, what kind of new Yetzer Hara was this? And so on. In other words, the Erev created the Yetzer Hara, which was Jewish, and which fundamentally submitted to Jewish laws. So what kind of Yetzer Hara was this? So this is a new Yetzer Hara, because before then, all the Yetzer Haras said a sheker, that the Kochavim and the Mazolos, the stars in heaven and the planets, represent powers. They have independent powers. But what the Erev said was not that the stars have independent powers. The Mashiach ben Yosef is being substituted by this Egel Azov, and it now has some independent powers. But this was not the Avodah Zarah of all. Now, what's the difference between this as a Mashiach ben Yosef, which has independent powers, and Kochavim and Mazolos, and planets and stars? What's the difference? The difference is that this is Al Pi Torah. In other words, originally Avodah Zarah was not Al Pi Torah. It was a sheker. It wasn't even a sheker. In a certain sense, the Baruch Hashem calls it Avodah Zarah. What does the name Avodah Zarah mean? Avodah Zarah means strange worship. Why is Avodah Zarah, idol worship, called strange worship? Why isn't it called false worship, Avodah Sheker? It's not called Avodah Sheker. Why? Because fundamentally the basis of Avodah Zarah is true. Why? Because the Rebbe Hashem releases his energy to the world through the Mazolos. I don't know if you know this, the Ramchal says this, that the koyach of the spheres, the koyach of the energy, comes down to the world. How? First it reaches the Malachim. the spheres are attached to the Malachim, and then the Malachim are attached to the Kechavim Mazolas, and it goes through the Kechavim Mazolas. Now, how does that happen? That means that the science of astronomy is really the science of the koiches of the Bnei Shalom. You ever wonder why there's so many stars in the world? Why there are hundreds of billions and trillions and quadrillions and quintillions stars in the world with galaxies? Why? Because there are hundreds, billions and billions and billions types of hashpos, types of energies. Every time a Jew moves in a certain direction, that motion of the Jew is supported by a sphere. Do you know that? You can't do a thing. All you are is a self, and the self cannot act. The only action that a self has, which is the two zulasoi, is what? What kind of action? It's self-awareness. Other than self-awareness, a self cannot do anything. There's no such thing as action. And that's why this world is called the Olam Asiyah, the world of action. Why? Because this is the only place in all the universe, in everything, in all of creation, where it's possible to do something. Because nothing can be done. Everything that has to be done is Hashem that's doing it. The only time you can do something, that has free will, in some sense, it's almost like outside of God, is through the stars, because the stars are the conduits, or the medium, or the intermediaries in which the hashpah of the spheres come down to the world through the malachim, and it allows people to act. You can't raise your hand without the sphere giving permission it. You understand this fact. So therefore, Avodah Zorah is true. The stars do control the actions of the universe. It does. The actions of humanity are controlled by the stars via the malachim, via the spheres. It's true. But why is it Avodah Zorah? Why is it a strange worship? Because they are not independent. In other words, the mazolos, the stars in heaven, are not independent of God. And Avodah Zorah is when you worship something and you declare that it is independent of the Bnei Shalom, that it can do something that the Bnei Shalom doesn't want to have done or can't do. In either case, the action is independent of God. And as soon as you declare that something is independent of God, right? Even though most of the time it is dependent. But even if it's independent of the Bnei Shalom, 1% of the time, that is Avodah Zorah. Do you understand that? Because that takes away the sovereignty, the absolute sovereignty of the Bnei Shalom. The Bnei Shalom is in control of everything. Everything is included in him. There is nothing outside of him. And so on. So even though we have free will, we only have free will. We only have free will in terms of choice, in terms of a machshava. My machshava, my thought, is my free will, but that doesn't mean I can do anything. The free will is manifest as a thought, not as a deed. It's only manifest as a deed because of the spheres, because they give you the possibility of doing it. So therefore, every action in creation is under the sovereignty of the spheres, which is under the sovereignties of the Eisav, and under that is the Bnei Shalom. That's it. You understand the relationship of Avodah Zorah to Emes. That's why the Bnei Shalom does not say it's Avodah Sheker. It's a false thing. So the question now is, what did the Erevav create when they made the Egel Azov? They created an Avodah Zorah, a certain image, that through this image you can actually transmit and you can actually influence the koyach of the koyach of the Mashiach ben Yosef. The Avodah Zorah of the Erevav is the Mashiach ben Yosef. That is not a true Avodah Zorah, totally true. That is somewhat true because they still maintain that in a certain sense it was what do you call it? It had an aspect of independence, but not totally like Avodah Zorah. So now the question is, what is that Avodah Zorah? So I'm going to tell you what that Avodah Zorah is. How do you know an Erevav? How can you recognize of an Erevav? Does an Erevav, is he a person who's not from? No. because a person who's not religious and doesn't keep the mitzvahs is not an Erev. That's a Jew who doesn't keep the mitzvahs. Okay, so maybe an Erev is a person who influences people not to keep the Torah. And no, the Erev is a Choto Machtes Rabim. Maybe that's what an Erev is, right? And so on. And the answer to that is no. That's not an Erev. That's a Jew. That's a Jew who hates Torah so much that he says to everyone, don't keep the Torah. It's false. So then what is an Erev? What exactly is the Avodah Zorah of an Erev? Could somebody answer me? Does anyone know what did the Erev create? Well, I assume that you don't know. What?
An alternative to the Rebbeinu Shalom. I mean, that's what the Erev somehow were created.
In what way? In what way did but an alternative to the Rebbeinu Shalom is an Avodah Zorah?
Yeah.
No. An alternative to the Rebbeinu Shalom is Avodah Zorah. As soon as you say this thing also has independent power, you have created an Avodah Zorah. So that's not true.
No, they utilize
so my question.
A distortion. It's a distorted version of Yiddishkeit. That's what it is.
What is the distortion? Yeah. What is the distortion?
The Shimon, nobody has a clue. Take it away.
Okay. You see, you can't understand what's going on today unless you understand what happened by the Egel Azov. And I'm the only one who really says this. Because the Egel Azov is a new Yetzirah that was never created before. So the question is, what did they do? So I'm going to answer you. The Erev said to Klal Yisrael, no. They said to Klal Yisrael, we will tell you what the Torah is. We are not denying the fact, and so on and so forth, that the Bnei Yisrael may be Megala the Torah to you, and so on. You know, we are changing how, but we are going to Megala to you what the Torah is. What did the Torah that was revealed by God? And that's what the Erev did. They created a different version of Matan Torah. What did they say? That it was written by Moshe Rabbeinu through the influence, the influence of God. That Moshe was spiritually influenced by God, but it's not really come from God. It's the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's man-made. That's what they said. And then they changed the laws. They said the Bnei Yisrael did not really say that Shabbos is prohibited. There are times when now you can do Shabbos. In other words, Shabbos can be eliminated. So, in other words, by making the Torah a man-made event, by making Matan Torah into a man-made situation, they converted what Matan Torah is, because they took the authority away from God. And therefore they said, well, what God said was this. What he said was this. They said different things, but what they also said was, God changed it. Depends on the time. In other words, when we were in ancient times, maybe that was true, but that's not true anymore. All the laws of the Torah don't apply, because in modern history, it doesn't apply. So therefore, the Erev was able to change the nature of Matan Torah so that now it's a relative thing. It's not absolute. Do you understand this? That's the first thing that they did. And the second thing, they did something else they did, which is incredible. You know, I would never have thought of this. I mean, it's really incredible. What they did was they said this: what's the ik of the Torah? What's more important? The way man relates to man or man relates to God? So they said the most important thing is bein adam lechavero. And that if you are good, bein adam lechavero, you don't have to keep one mitzvah. The entire Torah is bottled bein adam lemakom, between man and God, if you keep the mitzvahs bein adam lechavero. And therefore, what philosophy comes out of the Erev? What is connected to that thought that the mitzvahs bein adam lechavero, between man and man, are the most important mitzvahs, and that makes you a tzaddik?
Christianity.
That makes you a tzaddik. What?
Secular humanism.
Right. Exactly. Who said that?
Michael, I said secular humanism.
You're right. You got it. Secular humanism. In other words, the one who created was secular humanism, was not modern day. That was created by the Erev. In other words, if you are a tzaddik, bein adam l'chaveroi, in other words, if you do chesed and achnosis ochem, and you give tzedakah, and so on and so forth, bein adam l'chaveroi, you are a tzaddik. That's it. You're a tzaddik.
Where do you see that by the Egel Azov?
Because that's what it means, Mashiach ben Yosef. The Mashiach ben Yosef is a holy thing. It has a kedusha. And what kedusha do you see was done? You see that the kedusha was not avodah zorah in the true sense. It was avodah zorah as a substitute for the Mashiach ben Yosef, for Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore you see that the main thing that they were talking about is how to control the Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, do you think they can control the Mashiach ben Yosef by saying to you that all the mitzvahs are batel? Do you think that's what they were saying? No, of course not. Of course they maintain that there's a certain kedusha by Mashiach ben Yosef. Of course. And what is that kedusha? That kedusha is the mitzvah bein adam l'chaveroi, not bein adam l'mokum. They selected what it takes to define a tzaddik. Why did they do that? Why did they get rid of the mitzvah bein adam l'mokum? Because that's the war between man and God. That's the new Yetzer Hara. In other words, the Rebbeinu Shem says that for you to be a tzaddik, you have to do the melochos that not only bein adam l'chaveroi, between one Jew and another, also bein adam l'mokum, between a Jew and God. And that's the concept of Kedusha. Kedusha is only maintained between the mitzvahs that are between man and God. Shabbos, Kashrus, Taras Mishpacha. These mitzvahs are really the ones that give you Kedusha. What does bein adam l'chaveroi give you? It makes you a mensch. It makes you a tzaddik. But it doesn't make you a kadosh. They never said it makes you a Kaddish because it doesn't make you a Kaddish. But a Kaddish is the highest Madrega, which they eliminated. But it makes you a Tzaddik. And they said, I am already a Tzaddik if I keep the mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveroi. So therefore, why do I have to listen to God? In other words, they found a way to ignore the mitzvahs bein adam l'mokum. That I don't have to listen to God. Nobody can tell me what to eat, when to work, what to do with my money, and so on and so forth. That's what they invented. They invented spirituality that does not include the Ribono Shel Olam. So therefore, they were secular in a certain sense. They said you have to be kind to your fellow man. And therefore, this is the beginning of what? Of liberalism, of progressivism. Where do you think progressivism comes from? Where? It doesn't come from people today or so on and so forth. It really comes from the Erev Rav. Because the Erev Rav maintained that if you are a progressive human being, meaning that you are helping other people, you are helping people with unemployment insurance, you are helping people with paying medical expenses, you are helping people pay for their colleges. Whenever you assist other people, you are doing the mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveroi, and that makes you a tzaddik. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to listen to anything that God says to you that connects you to God. God is no longer the chief of the Jewish religion. So they created a new concept because they disallowed cruelty. Cruelty used to also be part of Judaism, but they disallowed cruelty. They said you cannot be cruel to other people because that's spiritual also. That's why this is like a religion. What you don't realize when you watch what's happening in America today, this is a religious war. Why do the people who are liberals and progressives literally in tantamount to believing in a religion and a cult? They believe that what they are saying is absolutely true. I don't know if you realize that. They believe that they are righteous people and they are telling you the absolute truth. They are tzaddikim. Why? Because they respect people, they respect mankind, and they hold that you have to further mankind. And that's what they hold Tikkun HaKlali. They always mention the Jew has to massacre in the world. How does the Jew have to massacre in the world? What's the tikkun that the Jew has to bring to the world? fundamentally the tikkun is bein adam chaveru. They have to bring humanity to the world. That's why they're called secular humanists. It's called secular because God is erased, and it's called humanism because they believe in the sanctity of mankind. Do you understand that? Now, where does that religion come from? Whoever said that? Who took God away from religion? There is no religion in the world that takes God away, except for secular humanists. Who created such a concept? You see it. Who made such a Yetzer Hara? The answer is the Erev. By appointing the Egel Azov as fundamentally the representative of Mashiach ben Yosef, they created a new religion, which means that they created a new Yetzer Hara. I don't know if I ever explained this before. I think I did, but I don't know if I made myself clear. You have no idea what they created. Such a Yetzer Hara never existed before. And this became a Yetzer Hara that would follow mankind through the rest of its history. Not only would they be Rishoyim, right? There would be Rishoyim who don't believe in God and all, and would be cruel, bad. There would be dictators and the totalitarian states, yes. But there would be a new type of person that never existed before. He wouldn't believe in God, but he would believe in the rights of man. And this was created by the Erev with the Egel Hazov. Does everyone understand this? That's why this is such a major thing. People think that this was a major hate because they despoiled the Gula. They prevented the Gula. No! That's not why this is a major thing. This is a major hate. This is a major sin. Because they eliminated God from Judaism. They eliminated God from religion. And they said that it's possible to be a tzaddik, to be religious, right? Without God. That's why God took away the Gula. Because God said, how is it possible to be without me? I am the beginning and the end of all creation. What are you kidding? It's not possible, because the Geula, the redemption of mankind, not only implies good behavior, it not only implies being kind to your fellow man, it implies having a relationship, being in love with me. In other words, the question is this: what's the most important mitzvah in Kol HaTorah Kula? What's the most important mitzvah in the Torah? And the hardest one to attain. Right. And you shall love the Lord thy God. Why is that the most important mitzvah in the Torah? Why? Is the mitzvah of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha and you shall love your neighbor? Is that important? Is it as important as Ahavta l'Hashem l'kecha? No, it is not. The most important mitzvah in the Torah is to love God. The second most important mitzvah in the Torah is to love your fellow man. And in terms of accusations, the B'nai Shem goes first with loving God and second with loving man. But in terms of punishment, the B'nai Shem will punish you if you do not love your fellow man before he punishes you himself. The B'nai Shem is willing to overlook temporarily if you don't love him, but you still are good. And he did that with the Bo HaFlaga. You see that from the generation of the Tower of Babel. If people are peaceful amongst each other, even though they fight God, God overlooks that and will not destroy them. Because God is also a mishpacha, and he expects you to behave to a fellow man like a mishpacha. And if you love your fellow man, that's good. But the most important mitzvah in the Torah is that you should love God. Why is that the most important mitzvah? Let's see if you can tell me that.
That's the tikkun of Nam Tzufa. That's the tikkun of Nam Tzufa.
Right. Very good. Very good. Because that is the tikkun of Nam Tzufa. The tikkun of Nam Tzufa does not lie in V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Partially it does. But it really lies in where? It lies in V'ahavta Hashem l'kacha, and you shall love God. That's the tikkun of Nam Tzufa. And somebody explained to me why that's the tikkun of Nam Tzufa.
Of you're reconnecting with your zivug, with the Eisav. You're going back.
Very good. You guys are on top of it.
Well,
because you are he said it exactly. Because you are reconnecting with your zivug. Because God is not simply the God of the world who created the universe. God is the zivug of the Zulosoi and so on, of the recipient of Olam Haba. God has a special relationship with us. We are not simply created beings who are created by God. We are not simply that. We existed before Tzimtzum. That supports with fourth symptom. We existed at the outset when God somehow created the Ein Sof. When he created the Ein Sof, he simply didn't create the Ein Sof, he created the Zivug of the Ein Sof. The Ein Sof together with its Zivug. And who is its Zivug? The Zulosoi. But when he did that, he placed a problem. There was a problem that existed in the Zulosoi. And what's that? Namlik Super. We have to correct that. So that's what he has to do. But we have to love God because we already love God. We just have to realize that. And that takes away the shame of Namlik Super. That doesn't take away Namlik. That doesn't take away Nama. That doesn't take away the fact that we will forever. Because God says in Olam Haba, I am you, but you are not me.
You are not me. Right.
God does not take away the individuality or the attempted, the possible separation, the apparent separation, but he does take away the embarrassment because when you are in love with someone, you feel to them like they are you, and therefore you have no shame. Right. So when the Erev Rav destroyed the mitzvah of Kedusha, of the relationship of the human being and God, it destroyed finally the one principle which eliminates Namlik Sufa. That was the Chiddush, and it made it valid. Why? Because before this Avodah Zorah was not valid. There was no independent power but God. But after the Erev Rav created the Egel Azov, that it's an independent Mashiach ben Yosef, that the Mashiach ben Yosef functions independently of God in a certain way, that is Avodah Zorah. And therefore they supported the love of man to man, but not the love of man to God. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying a very deep thing.
And could you say that Yeravim ben Avot and Achav, that's why they were so into Avos Yisrael?
Well, in a way you can, but I don't want to go into I would say that in a certain way, but I don't want to go into that because that will take me far off afield. So now that you understand what the Erev Rav did, where does that represent itself? Because from then on, what's Christianity and so on? That you have to love your fellow man. Right? And that Jesus loves you. Who is Jesus? A man. They were able to eliminate God by making Jesus the top guy. They worship Jesus. They don't worship necessarily God. He's only 1/3 of the equation. So the whole thing that they did was they created the possibility through that klipa, through that exile, where the Shekhinah went into the klipa of the Yetzer Hara by Adam l'makom. The Yetzer Hara was confined, the evil inclination was confined to between man and God. And that you are a tzaddik if you obey the laws of man and man. Now, why isn't this true? Why are you not a tzaddik? If you follow the laws of man to man, if you are kind to your fellow human being, why are you not a tzaddik? It doesn't make sense. So therefore, socialism and communism and all those things are really outgrowths of this discovery of the Erev Rav. So my question to you is, why is that not true? Why aren't you at least a tzaddik when you observe the mitzvahs of being kind to your fellow man? Which the liberals are, which the progressives are. What's wrong with that? I admit it's wrong. That doesn't have Kedusha. But why doesn't that make you a tzaddik? Who can answer that?
Because they don't do it on their own personal accord. They do it with Yenim's money. They force you.
Right. Exactly. That's what Margaret Thatcher said. Said even socialists eventually run out of other people's money. The American government does chesed how? By taking your money, by taxing you, by creating new taxes. And what do they do with most of the taxes? Most of the taxes you pay are for entitlements. They are for entitlements. They are not to defend the government. The government only has a right to defend, to pay for an army, and to pay for the administration of a government to protect the American people. But they don't have really an intrinsic right to what? To pay for a person's college? That's not true. There are foundations that can do that. Man can do that by himself. But the fact that the government does that, the government has instituted laws to do that, is a serious question if they're allowed to do that. That's a serious question of Bein Adam Lamo. That's a question if that's one of the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach. Those 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach says that people have to form governments for what? To protect themselves. Because it says if it wasn't for the government, every man would swallow up every other man. So that's why. But who says that the government has to take taxes in order to provide for other men? And what happens if you don't pay your taxes? What happens if the government says you owe them money for entitlements, to give other people entitlements, and you say no? What does the government do to you? They throw you in jail. That's what they do to you. In other words, this is compulsory. This is armed robbery. Fundamentally, this is armed robbery because the government will threaten you. They will threaten you by putting you in jail. They will threaten your life if you don't give them all the money that they want. And what do they want the money? Because they believe they have to take care of everybody. They changed the Bill of Rights. What does it say? What does it say in the Declaration of Independence? It says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That you're entitled to what? The only thing you're entitled to is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's all. It doesn't say you're entitled to college degrees. It doesn't say you're entitled to be picked up and taken somewhere. It doesn't say any of that. It doesn't say any of these chesed. This chesed could be performed by foundations, individual foundations. This doesn't have to be performed by the government. But the fact that the government does this is armed robbery because they say if you don't give me your money to pay for people's college, I'm going to put you in jail. I'm going to make a law that they are this entitlement. The government cannot create entitlements that they want. They don't have that power. That's not a power of the 7 mitzvahs. That's an aberration of the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach. Please, that's an aberration.
Shimon,
what?
Shimon, are you saying that it's not true? Are you saying essentially that it's not true?
Right. It's not true. It's armed robbery. Let me ask you a question. Can you steal a person's esrog and lulav and esrog and make a brach on it? Could you be yotzi by stealing somebody's esrog, lulav and esrog and make a brach on it? Yes or no?
Of course not. Of course, the mitzvah
you can.
But it's even worse than that. Their intention is not really to do chesed with it. It's to keep themselves in power, to buy.
Right, that's the impression. But I don't have to, but you don't understand. I don't have to consider their impression. That's the panemius of a mitzvah. Even if their impression is shaloi lishmo, or they simply want to remain in power, you can still do it. Don't. As long as the people are maskim, as long as the citizens of a country agree with this concept that you want to pay for people's college education, then you can do it. But if they don't agree, you can't do it. You cannot make such entitlements. And the U.S. government has created a whole bunch of entitlements to do that. And that's the reason why this concept of being a tzaddik b'nadar chaveru is false. It is false. Because it's done through armed robbery. You see, and this is what I'm saying. So therefore, who started this? Who started this justification? You know what I mean? Where does Karl Marx have the ability to say that nobody owns anything, that the government owns everything? Where does he come along with such a chutzpah? You have to have a police force. You have to have prosecuting attorneys and a district attorney. You have to have all that to keep the law and order. But you cannot create entitlements just because you feel like creating it. And surely you cannot create entitlements to keep yourself in power, which is what they do. So the whole thing is a sheker. All the progressivism is a fundamental sheker. It's to keep people in power. But it's a new Yetzer Hara. They've created a new Yetzer Hara that keeps them in power by disqualifying God from being the head of a religion and simply saying the religion is secular humanism. That's the new Yetzer Hara, that you can be a tzaddik even though you have nothing to do with God, period. So therefore what you see is happening in America is a very powerful thing. Because what the Erev does, the Erev exists in every generation. Every generation has an Erev which continues to support this liberal, progressive idea. And finally, in America now, they are threatening to take over America. With Biden and Kamala Harris, they are threatening to take over America. They are threatening to make the religion of America secular humanism and to destroy the religion of America as relating to God and Kedusha. They are threatening to take away this concept. So therefore, this is a war. That's why when you look out there, you see it's a war. That's why they can rob and loot and do everything. They can destroy businesses. They can do whatever they want. Why? Because they feel that they're right. Because the Yetzer Hara says, you are a tzaddik. It doesn't make a difference. You can do whatever you want. As long as what you give a little bit to other people, you're kosher. That's why there is no morality. There is no morality at all that has to do at all with what God says. And that's what the Republicans see. That's the danger of America. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? So therefore, now let me go on. So what does this have to do with the Geula? Because this is the Ramchal says that in the last act of redemption, the Rabbi Shimon what? Well, the Geula is associated with a window. The window will almost close. In other words, the kitrugim, the accusations against the Jews, against the world, will be so great that God will almost have to eliminate the redemption. That's right. The world is not worthy of the redemption, and the window will almost be closed. So God is telling us what the status, the Ramchal is telling us what the status of the Geula is. That the Ketrugim, the accusations against man, will be so great that the Shekhinah will be in total golus. And he will support the fact of the Ketrugim, and they will have to burn. God will destroy mankind. That's the status right before the Geula. And guess what? That's where we're holding. We are actually holding that. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara of the Erev is king. Most of they say the majority of Americans are liberals and progressives. The majority of Americans are ready to become socialists. They're ready to follow that credo. So therefore, America, which is the last great hope of mankind, according to Lincoln, and it's the last country which is a super cop, which kills some type of morality in the world, is about to disappear. Why? Because of the Ketrugim. Because there are serious accusations that must annihilate America. And God has to agree with this. Why? Because these are Ketrugim. These are actual accusations against the world. But the Ramchal says as soon as that happens, when the window is about to close and the Geula cannot happen, suddenly the window will open. Because the suffering of mankind will atone for all their sins. And at the last moment, the Geula will happen at the last moment. I say it again. It will happen at the last moment. And that's what's happening. Biden is still ahead. Why is a man who's possibly a little retarded, who's intellectually declined and cognitively declined, why is he a candidate for president of the United States? This is a nace. No normal people would vote for a man like to be a CEO. So how could people vote for this man to be a CEO of the entire America? This is insane. It's psychotic. Why? Because God is doing this. This is from God. This is not from people in America. It is from them. In a certain sense, they are being tested. This is the last birur. This is the last choice that people have to make before the redemption. The last choice is this. Either they will destroy America by adopting secular humanism, by getting rid of God, or they will bring the Geula. This is the last choice and the last test before the actual redemption. Why? Because this is when the Erev Rav will win. The Erev Rav started, 3,400 years ago, 3,200 years ago, whatever it was. That's when it started with the Erev Rav. But they are about to win. Why? Because this is what mankind has come. God has changed the Yetzirah. God has changed the Yetzirah, the evil inclination. He has changed it to become not Avodah Zarah anymore, but to become the Yetzirah of secular humanism. And he is about to give it full hatzlacha, full success. He's allowing people to vote for Biden and Kamala Harris, the two biggest liberals, and destroy American democracy, the Constitution. Why? Because that's what the world deserves.
How do we know the full manifestation? How do we know that it's not the full manifestation of secular humanism that is before the window is almost shut?
Most likely, and this is the only thing that I could say, the question I think that you're asking is, how do we know that it'll stop there? Maybe Biden will win and America will turn into a secular humanist and so on. No, exactly. I don't believe that will happen. I don't believe that will happen because that means total victory for the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav will have won. Not only the Erev Rav will have stopped the redemption at the time of Matan Torah, the Erev Rav will have stopped the redemption, period. Because that's the end of America and that's the end of the world. Because all the dictators, potential dictators, will suddenly come out of the wall and they will all take over their countries because they're just waiting for it. They're just waiting for America to disappear and to become corrupt. And the day that America becomes a corrupt country, they are in business. And America will be filled with totalitarianism, with dictatorships. That's what's going to happen. And that's the end of society. That's the end of mankind. And I don't believe God will allow that. What?
So Reb Shimon thinks Trump is going to win the election.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I think that Trump will win the election.
So you still didn't explain why this is coming out now.
Because
Trump wins, exactly.
Yeah.
No,
Trump wins, why is it coming out?
No, I did explain it. No, I'm sorry. I am sorry. I did explain it. Because we are at the end of history. That's right. This generation is the end. We are right in front of the redemption. That's right. That's what it is. And either the redemption will happen or it will not happen. And then the window suddenly opens up again, like the Ramchal says. When the window is almost closed, and I believe that this indicates this, what indicates that the window is almost closed is when America has a real threat of becoming secular humanist and doing away with God. That's the end of history. And therefore, this is the end of history, and this will be the beginning of the Geula. That's what I believe.
So your whole piece
earlier,
Reb Shimon, your whole piece earlier about secession is not really going to come to. It's not really going to happen. That's why I'm confused, because you started off this year that Biden wins and the secession happens.
But I don't understand what you're talking about. It may happen. It's very likely to happen. So what are you talking about? Do you know what's going on out there?
I'm confused. Even after Trump wins, it's still going to be America's still going to split in two?
No, America will not split in two. But if Trump wins, you're going to have a trial. Biden will still go to trial. Once you commit treason, you commit treason. They're not going to forgive that. But America will not succeed. You misunderstood me. I'm saying if Biden wins, America, I think, possibly will secede from the Union, the Republicans. But if he doesn't succeed, they will not.
Happen. You don't
of course not.
Win. So, in essence, what you're saying is, to Avi's point, what he said earlier, that this is going to be the vehicle to destroy the whole Democratic Party and the whole left and CNN and
okay, wait, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Why is this happening now? Because this is the end of history. And what's going to happen if Trump wins? Then the Gula will happen probably right then and there or shortly thereafter and so on. And why is it happening now? Because this is the end of history. This is the last battle between mankind and the Erevav. Because just like the Jews have an Erevav, the Goyim have an Erevav. The Erevav is the enemy of truth. The Erevav does not deny truth. It says you have to be very kind to your fellow man. That's what the Erevav says. But what the Erevav does, it distorts truth. Because by saying that you have to be kind to America, to all people, and you have to allow all kinds of entitlements, America will go bankrupt. And America will cease to be the cop of the world. It will not have the money to do that. The Erevav will bankrupt America, and that's exactly what Biden will do. Bankrupt America, and he will destroy the last great hope of mankind. And that's why this is happening now, because this is, I think, the final test in some way. Now, I may possibly be wrong. I mean, I can't necessarily predict with 100% accuracy what God is going to do. I can't. But I think that somehow this may be true. And this is why you have such a war between the Democrats and the Republicans. You finally have a war, a true war, not a military war, but an ideal war, a war of ideals, about what will determine the future of America. And that's why this is so important in a sense of the election itself. This is a continuation of the Erevav. It's the Erevav reaching its final destination, which is Biden and Kamala Harris. You see it. And now that God suddenly has put up the concept of what? That Biden is liable for treason, right? That he's done. It shows that God is going to do more than that. It's not only that the Erevav will win. God will destroy America totally by having it succeed. And those, what I'm saying is the reason why God now has put a charge against Biden, which is treason, because God intends to destroy America. America will probably become two countries. And once it becomes two countries, it will become Earth America. It will no longer be the America that we know. It will no longer be the moral constants of the world. That's it. Now, this may be grim. I'm sorry. I apologize. But this is the way I see it. And I see this because of what God is doing now. 3 weeks before the election, something comes out which can destroy America. And what is that? Not the fact that Biden can win. That will not destroy America, at least not in the short term. But what will destroy America is if Biden wins, because he will be thrown out and Kamala Harris will be put in or not put in. But in any case, it will be a constitutional crisis of such proportions that probably America will split. What they didn't do in the time of Lincoln, they will do now, because America will not tolerate a president who's obligated for treason, who's liable for treason.
We have to believe that America has the schusum to be matzal.
Yes, and I believe it does. Because not all America, don't forget that America's done something else. They've not only matted all kinds of entitlements. What's the greatest entitlement, one of the greatest entitlements that America has suddenly been matter, that they have never been matter in history? And yet it's the thing which makes God totally angry. What is that? Okay. What entitlement exists now, which we know infuriates God?
Gay marriage.
No bail for criminals. I mean, the whole justice system.
That's common.
No, not the justice system. What else? When was the only time in history that God said, I will destroy the city? And he overturned the city spiritually. When did he do that?
Right, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right. And what was the main sin of Sodom and Gomorrah?
Gay marriage.
Right. That's it.
Yeah,
So has America allowed gay marriages? Yes. Now, now gay marriage is against the Bible, but I'm not saying that's a destruction, because if people who are gay did it privately, then it would be between them and God. They have to work that out with God. So I'm not saying that we therefore have to dislike them or destroy them. I'm not saying that at all. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying that homosexuality has to be destroyed, but I am saying that God is saying that. So therefore, they have to work that out with God. We don't have to do anything. But once we, as a government, say that this is constitutionally viable and that you're allowed to do that, once we actually do that, then we are provoking God. And the only time that God demonstrated real anger is when he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what he did. And so therefore we are provoking God by suddenly saying the LGBTQ is completely all right. Everything's fine. Mankind does not realize this is a tremendous provocation to God. Now, most of America is not doing this. Most of America believes in religion and believes in the Torah and the Bible in some way. So most of America does not want to do it. Is the American government, all the governors, like the governors and the president, they're all doing it. They're pushing this. So that's why we have arrived at the final bureau. We've arrived at the final selection. God is now selecting which humans will be part of the redemption truly, and which humans are in danger of that. Now, I'm not saying there won't be the redemption, but I am saying this is a great danger for anyone who votes for this government which supports abortion after birth and which supports the LGBTQ. Very great as a legalistic right from the government. So have I explained why this is happening? Why this is happening now? Have I explained this adequately?
Yes.
Yeah. Shimon, great stuff. Thank you.
Well, look, were any of you people aware of this?
I've been feeling it since it came down.
You've structured it. We're aware of the pratim, but you've structured it.
Right, and this is what I believe. Now, you can disagree with me.
Most people are just left scratching their head. How in the world a guy like Biden could be ahead in the polls?
And that's innate. When you should know one thing about God. God normally operates through hidden miracles. He never shows himself. But when God shows himself, then he says that this is me. And the fact that Biden has become the candidate to become president of the United States, when it's ridiculous, nobody would even make this person a babysitter for his children, much less president of the United States. This is God saying, I am doing it.
The scariest part of this to me, I sat in a big yeshiva minyan this Shabbos, and I heard the Rosh Yeshiva, who's a wonderful man, but he presented it like there's evils on both sides. And after davening, I went to speak to him personally, I in a very polite manner. And his example of why he presented it in that way was he used the Clinton Bush election, and how Reb Schwab, said why Clinton will be negative, but Bush will be negative. And he was using that as an example to suggest that today is something similar. I told him about Masira, and I'm just saying that most of the firm of world is.
David, I would disagree with that fully. I actually posted on the website right in the beginning of this year. Yeah. All the major yeshivas and rebbes sent a letter to Trump thanking him for his support of the Jewish community. So I think
So he agrees with that personally.
Came out now. All the Gedolim came out to vote for Trump.
Yes.
They came out of
and I can tell you in Lakewood, 95% of the Frum people are voting for Trump. That's unprecedented.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Yeah. We don't have that going on in the 5 towns. It's a little different.
The small Kamenetsky is by far the oldest yeshiva around today, almost.
Yes.
The whole and there's a tape circulating. It clearly tells everybody it's severe, it's serious. You have to vote Goyim, Yidden. Everybody has to vote for Trump. He's very strong about that.
Okay, that's wonderful.
So the yeshiva is definitely following.
Okay.
And he said he never endorsed the president publicly. Yeah.
Right.
Till now.
Okay.
So, Tres, what I would be willing to do is, could this be put on YouTube?
Sure. I'll send it to him.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get it on YouTube.
Let's have it. Yeah.
I think this thing should go on YouTube.
Yeah.
Sure.
What do you think?
I want to think of a good. Yeah, for sure. I think there should be a good title on it. A good,
it's timely
title on it, so it'll catch people's eye. That's. I think
and you can put down the final war against God.
That's it.
This is a war against God. Yeah.
Do you want to reference this election, because that will get a lot of people's attention?
Yeah, we should somehow mention the election.
The final war against God. Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Election.
If you mention the election, it will have probably the Derech HaTeva have a lot more hits.
Okay, mention the election. The election. You can okay. So you can write the election of 220, the final war against God.
That's it.
Okay.
That's the one.
Let me just email myself that title. I'll be in touch with him. That guy will do it. The one who does it for Reb Mendel.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Yasher Koach, Reb Shimon.
Okay, so next week we're gonna have another share. So let's do that. Okay, next week.
Sounds good.
Yeah, next week there might be a lot of news from now till then.
There probably will be. Let's hope that I'm right.
Let's hope.
Yeah, I want to change the October surprise to Yad Hashem.
Yep.
And this election, you're gonna have it all over the place. Every drop of it.
Yad Hashem.
Okay.
Hey, Tuesday will be the final part of Lech Lecha, the last part of Parshas Lech Lecha.
Yeah.
On Tuesday. Yeah.
It will be. That's right.
Yeah.
The final part of Lech Lecha and so on. Well, do most of you, do you feel that what I'm saying about the Eisav, what they created, do you think that people mostly agree with that?
I think it's Pasha.
Yeah, that's strong Ashkafa. Yeah, that's very strong Ashkafa. That's solid Ashkafa, yeah.
Right, I'm not saying this. I'm saying this is part of Ashkafa. That's true either way about the Eisav.
Yeah. And you also answered why God allowed it to come till here, which is a tremendous Gilu Yehudai, The whole
and it's also, it shows you the tremendous.
Said the final Gula is the Eisav.
Yeah, the Vilna Gaon says this. The final Gula is the Eisav itself, and this is where the Shechina is. So that's why this battle is taking place. The battle of the Eisav to the Goyim and the battle of the Eisav. That's what my brother says when he says it's Tov Shebe Eisav or the Ra Shebe Eisav. But my brother doesn't explain it this way. But what it means is the Erev Vav is the Ra Shebe Eisav.